It's not easy, right? To tell people like, I don't know, I'm scared. It almost sounds like you're weak, but I actually feel that if you assemble the right team, when you're sort of weak in front of them and being honest with them, there are more people who want to help you. In fact, that is the irony, right? The more you say you don't know, I can't do this, the more people will come in and say, let me do this.
Welcome to Brave. Learn from Southeast Asia's best tech leaders. Build the future, learn from our past, and stay human in between. No BS on success. I'm Jeremy Au, venture capitalist, serial founder, Harvard MBA, sci-fi nerd, and dad of 2 daughters. Mondays for your weekly tech news debate with Shi & Co., managing partner of Hustle Fund. Wednesdays for interviews of regional changemakers covering both the highs and lows of leadership. Fridays for personal diary insights and listener questions and answers. Join our movement of over 12,000 members for transcripts, analysis, and community at www.bravesea.com. Do you manage your own IT for distributed teams in Asia? You know how painful it is. Epsiode helps your in-house team by taking tough tasks off their hands and giving them the tools to manage IT effectively. Get help across 8 countries in Asia Pacific, which includes onboarding, procurement, device management, real-time IT support, offboarding, and more. Gain full control of all your IT infrastructure in one place with our state-of-the-art platform. Check out Epsiode, ESEVEL.com, and get a demo today. Use our referral code BRAVE for 3 months free. Terms and conditions apply. Hey, Ethan. Excited to have you on the show. You're a founder looking to make things better for job seekers everywhere in Southeast Asia. So excited to have you on the show. Could you introduce yourself real quick?
Sure, thanks for having me. I'm Ethan, co-founder of NodeFlair. What we do is that we are a career transparency platform, and we offer payslip verified salary data to tech talents all across Asia. We make money by recruiting for tech companies. And today in Singapore, 1 in 4 tech talents actually use NodeFlair to make better career decisions.
Amazing. So how did you decide to be a founder in the first place?
So I think it's always in me, to be honest. When my first company actually failed like terribly, I think it took me like 3 to 4 months before I just like call it quits, right? That was sometime in 2017 when I paused school. Have you heard of like NOC, like NUS Overseas Colleges? Yeah, I was supposed to go to the Valley, but nobody wanted to hire me. Everyone of my batchmates actually went over, except for me, right? Which is very sad. So I took kind of a leave of absence from school, tried to do like random things like learning how to code and things like that. And then I co-founded a company with my friend, right? Which in 3 to 4 months, we realized, okay, it's not going to work out. And then we just shut it. And it was always in me, right? The itch. And then I joined Shopback. Then that was where I realized, oh, okay, execution is everything. I joined Shopback when it was like pre-Series A, when it was like less than 80 people. And now there are like thousands of people there, right? But I was part of the team that helped them with recruiting, launching teams in Taiwan and Vietnam. So day in, day out, I was talking to engineers, right? And I realized it's not just Shopback that faced the same problem, right? So that was where I just like started in 2018, 1 year on. Yeah.
So 5 years building NodeFlair for career transparency. So what was it like building it initially? How did you come up with the idea?
So actually, interestingly, we only chanced upon the idea of career transparency only I wouldn't say very recently, but in the past 1 to 2 years, right? So when we first started, it was purely like, okay, you know what? We just want to help companies recruit. But we were like young and naive, right? We were like, oh, we thought that we could solve this space, this recruiting problem, right? So we just went straight into it without doing any kind of market research. We don't even know the space that well, right? But I think we were very blessed because when we first started, it was like a recruiting company. It was pure recruiting, like an SME, even though we had dreams to make it like a tech company. I mean, more into that later. But yeah, when we first started recruiting, help companies, and we made some money and we just survived, right? It was until like post-COVID, not really post-COVID, but like sometime in 2021, where we were talking to candidates and we realized, hey, actually everyone is like complaining. They don't even know what's the salary band. HRs are like very opaque about it. They don't want to tell them. They were like, why not just use Glassdoor, right? And find out the information. But they were like, oh, it's not accurate and things like that. So we kind of spotted a bit of opportunity there. And we decided to be like, okay, how can we make a more verified version of Glassdoor? So we created NodeFlair.com, right? We relaunched the site and then it was like a hit. So at that time, we just like realized that that's what really people wanted. We were solving not just a salary transparency problem, but just career transparency as a whole, right? And that appealed to a lot of talents. So we just doubled down on that. Yeah.
I mean, Glassdoor has been fun, right? So sometimes, when I evaluate a new job or even, evaluating friend's company, you type it in and then Glassdoor often is one of the top few hits, right? Because it's like always like what? 2 unhappy reviews and 5 very positive reviews. And you're like, a bit fishy here, So what's right with Glassdoor? What went wrong as well from your perspective to say like, hey, we're better than Glassdoor?
Mm. Quick point, right? On like when you Google and then Glassdoor appears on the top. Actually, if you type like Carousel software engineer salary or something, company software engineer salary, actually NodeFlair ranks higher than Glassdoor for most of the keywords. And in fact, we have been tracking like number of keyword searches that we rank first. It's actually growing really quickly. So I think our SEO we have been investing a lot in SEO, right? We are trying to make ourselves rank at the top, right? Because we know we have the most reliable data when it comes to, say, Singapore, right? To your question, what went wrong with Glassdoor? That was a question, right? I can't say that there's something wrong with Glassdoor, to be honest. I think there is still a lot of users who use Glassdoor. In fact, a lot of users use Glassdoor and NodeFlair, right? Like concurrently, there's no like one place that they check multiple places. But I think one of the key things is that their reviews are very strong, right? Everyone goes there for reviews. There's a lot of emotion. Sometimes it becomes almost like a gossip place, right? But when it comes to salary, we realize that the band just doesn't, it's not accurate. Like we have real numbers and when we compare it, it seems to be very off. So we have some hypotheses and some theories, right? But if you go to Glassdoor today, the first page you're greeted with is actually to sign up or to add some information. You can't even read anything. It proves to be a very painful feature gate for many users. And the normal reaction is, how can I get out of that feature gate? And actually, you can put any data in and you can get by. You can actually access the site. But what you'll realize is that 1 or 2 days later, your data that you randomly put in without any backing is on Glassdoor. So, which is like, okay, they're kind of pushing for the number of submissions, but at the end of the day, is it really verified? Is it real data, right? And you have that kind of corrupted data, and that's where people are like, oh, okay, I'm not sure how much I can trust. Yeah, so we are like, okay, maybe we should do something there. Yeah, so that was how we thought about it.
Yeah, but I think the tricky part, like you said, is like I think a lot of people use Glassdoor, but it doesn't feel like it has all the best reviews, right? And honestly, it doesn't really feel like it's gotten a lot of attention or development or product improvements over time, right? So it does seem to be continuing to harvest in reviews, but it doesn't really seem to have any velocity in terms of product updates, right? And I think a big part of it, actually, from my perspective, was I remember years ago I found out that Glassdoor belonged to Indeed, right? And I was just like so shocked, right? Because I was like, Indeed is the hiring site, and then Glassdoor, I mean, also has jobs as well, but it's about the review side, right? It kind of made me kind of very curious about how it all operates and links together. What are your thoughts about that?
Okay, so quickly, actually, Glassdoor got bought over by Recruit Holdings, and Indeed got bought over by Recruit Holdings. So the biggest kind of like puppet player is really Recruit Holdings, and then they try to kind of force some synergy in between, right? I think according to some sources that I have, right, not too sure how accurate they will be, but when they look at Glassdoor, they were like, okay, retention is good. There's a lot of people going there to read. Engagement is high. Can we kind of like do something there, right? Whereas Indeed is very kind of like touch and go. You come here looking for jobs, off you go. But actually, Indeed is 10 times bigger than Glassdoor, right? So one thing that is not yet kind of exactly proven is how can Glassdoor actually generate value for recruiting, right? So I don't have enough sources to tell you that, but I think at the end of the day, it's also intense, right? So for example, right, a user that goes to Indeed has a high intention to actually apply for a job. Whereas Glassdoor, you look at the same number of users, actually they are higher up the funnel, right? Because they are there to kind of like read information. They're not exactly serious job applicants. They may be just considering, right? So per traffic, actually Indeed is more valuable, right? Because they are closer to the money. So unless they can do something to kind of spin out and generate CVs or generate some form of value for recruiting, I think it will always just be a content side, right? Where you play on ads, you play on some other model where like cost per view or something like a cost per impression or something like that. Yeah.
These are separate platforms, which makes sense, right? I mean, from their perspective is if you're a job applicant that's curious about it, you want to know Glassdoor reviews, right? Versus Indeed is very much geared at candidates, but very much is geared at recruiters to kind of like put a transaction dollar in to get candidates through the door, right? So I think there's some argument that each website kind of goes for different things, but I think they also work very hard to keep them arm's length, right, at brand, right? So it's just not intuitive that they're linked in any form or fashion, right? And what we do know, for example, is that Glassdoor reviews are subject to review and monetization for the companies as well. You want to explain a little bit about what happens there?
Oh, monetization?
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, it's very interesting. So if you look at Glassdoor, some of their main monetization kind of channels is like job ads, which is, I guess, job to classify. It's very similar Indeed, right? But one of the key ones is actually employer branding, right? When I talk about employer branding, I mean like charging some form of like fee subscription to give control to the employer to say reply to bad feedback, having to cherry pick some of the reviews to pin at the top. I don't really consider that employer branding because I think of it as more as like brand defense, right? It's like kind of someone holding a knife to your throat and like, you want to pay and can you do something there, right? And that has been their kind of main channel. But if you look deeper, right, actually job ads is super profitable. It's a super good business, right? The problem actually is with the Glassdoor itself, because you think about it, right? If you have a very bad branding on Glassdoor, would you even advertise on Glassdoor? You wouldn't, right? But you would do it on Indeed. So I think that was really one of their main struggles with Glassdoor. And that's why when you look at Indeed, like they actually have reviews, right? Indeed. Actually, they kind of partner with Glassdoor. So some of the reviews actually appear on Indeed, but it's not as visible. And it's by design, right? So you had to kind of click a few clicks in to see reviews. But that's really the crux of it, right? Indeed, know that the game is really employers first, pays Indeed. Therefore, they prioritize employers and make it like jobs first. Whereas for Glassdoor is like candidate centric, right? Where it's like, I want to show you the most real feedback, but employers hate it and employers don't want to pay for it. And that's why I think that was one of the reasons why Indeed is 10 times bigger than Glassdoor. Yeah.
And what's interesting is that you took the opposite approach, right? Because you go to NodeFlair, you have consolidated all of them, right? They're all on the same portal in that sense. So what's your design philosophy behind that?
So actually, I can't claim that we have it all figured out, right? But we were very clear and we did test this, right? So when we were part of the iterative accelerator program, we tried many things, including monetizing using job ads and employer branding. And that was where we had like accelerated learnings about why people actually don't even want to pay. I think one of the clients actually told us like, why would you want to pay at where people talk shit at? So I'm like, actually, that makes a lot of sense, right? Which is why I also realize that may not be the kind of the future of our company. But I think that at the end of the day, I think we have to be very clear what business we are in, right? We are in the recruiting business. 100% currently of our revenue comes from executive search, which is a very consulting, very service kind of business, right? And the question is, how can we make it better, right? Grow it bigger, do it better than the incumbents who are very traditional. So actually, NodeFlair, our site is kept quite separate from actually the recruiting business, right? So there's a team that's maybe look at how can we grow the traffic there, but eventually generate some form of value for the recruiting team. But not in a sense where we monetize directly, like charge employers, cost for employer branding or job ads. No, it's like, how can we get users what they want, which is salary data, and use it as a hook to get them to submit CVs, which then is a lead generation tool for our recruiting business. And we've seen parallel businesses that does this. One of them is Glints. I think they did it very well, where they get a ton of CVs from their site. They don't charge a single cent. They don't monetize on the platform yet, but they get a lot of value from the platform. And at the end of the day, their core revenue stream is still services. Yeah.
And as you see this, obviously it feels crowded, right? I mean, it feels like there's lots of different career approaches, right? And there's all these different marketplaces, right? I mean, even in the US, they scrape, has Google Jobs, right? They scrape everybody's carousels as well for their own search, right? For jobs. So where do you think it lands up? Where do you think the landscape will end up towards?
Mm. I mean, interesting thing you talked about, like, what other companies are doing. To be clear, when we first started a company, we were running like I would say, traditional recruitment firm, but we did dabble with a lot of things. When back then, when Hired.com was still a thing, right? Where it's like tech-enabled talent marketplace, basically charging the same fees as traditional firms, which is very high, like say 20 to 25% of annual, but not doing the recruitment work, right? Which is like, okay, recruit like HR, you go and search yourself. I think it wasn't a very good outcome for them either. So we tried that. It wasn't a very good outcome for us either. Yeah. So at least from me, I think operating in this space for a while, I do not believe that technology can replace the middleman. Because at the end of the day, right, I think if you see a lot of this kind of HR tech companies, what they are doing is like, oh, okay, we're going to be like AI powered. We're going to replace the middleman. I never believed in that because I really don't think that that's the way it works. Because at the end of the day, finding a job, it's very emotional. Yes, I think that there are some requirements on both sides. So for example, right, employers say, I want Node.js, I want skill set A, B, C, D. But actually, there are a ton of candidates that meet that requirement. But at the end of the day, when they pick, you can't really quantify that. Yeah, so a lot of this kind of AI is trying to like, read the JD, read the profile. But actually what happens is that 70 to 80% of the decision is made out of the CD, out of the JD, right? Yeah, so I do not believe in technology replacing the middleman, but I do believe that technology can make the middleman more successful, which is our approach and our strategy. And I've seen companies like AngelList, I think they rebranded or something like that. To Well-Found or something. Okay, anyway, but yeah, in the US is AngelList. In Southeast Asia, I think Glint is a big player. I think they all taken this approach, and I think it's the right approach. Yeah.
During this time, how have you changed and evolved as a founder and leader?
Interesting question. Yeah, so I think when I first started the company in 2018, just being super vulnerable here, right? The company has been around for close to 5 years, right? When we first started with a co-founder, we started like a recruiting business, right? But I think at the back of our minds is always like, we want to be a tech company. There was this startup dream. And looking back, I kind of cringe a little bit because honestly, like all I cared about was like, okay, we want to be a tech company. We want to be a founder of a tech company. What that means, we don't know, right? We don't know. We just wanted to run a tech company, be very successful to the eyes of, I don't know, like people. We want to raise VC funds, and then the more seasoned founders, right? Like my ex-boss and many founders around Block 71 who were kind enough and candid enough to tell you in your face, and like, why didn't you raise VC money? I don't know. In my mind is I don't know. Then obviously on the surface, I'll cook up some reason. Yeah, so it's always like this journey with yourself and struggle, like what are you really building towards, right? I was not super clear, at least with my co-founder, and it was always like chasing this tech dream. But when we realized that at the end of the day, we just want to do something useful, we just want to create value, we just want to do something that can eventually win. Then the approach is that, okay, we are actually a services business, but how can we use technology to make it better? How can we take more market share? What's our USP, right? And you realize that actually things are very simple. We are running a business. We're just trying to get as much market share. And I think that has helped me a lot, from being very jaded and naive to being more realistic. Yeah. That is what I would say.
So you mentioned there's the gap between who you are versus the founder that you wish you were, right? Can you share a little bit more about that?
I wouldn't say the founder I want to be. I think I honestly came a long way, right? I think the one big one is really being very naive, which is like having this startup dream, like, oh, like I said, I want this tech. I want to run a tech company. Whatever that means, I don't know. I can't answer you, right? To evolving to being super clear about what you really want, what I really want at least, and just pursuing that relentlessly, I think has been one of the key things that makes me do what I do every day. One of the key things is all about team building. So I realized that, yes, I want to create impact. I want to build a meaningful company and make everyone win, investors, team, whatever, win, right? But I realized team building was a big part that I got a kind of like a revelation, right? So interestingly, my friends know me as that crazy guy, that funny guy, and whatever, right? This person that they know. But in office, right, I'm like super different. And it's kind of funny because it's like, why is that? Like are you like living like a double life or something, right? So I always had this impression like as a founder, I needed this persona. I needed to know this, I need to know that. I can't say I don't know. So there's this like persona that I try to kind of build towards. I read a lot and then I try to like build it up, but it becomes very unnatural. Lor. Yeah, it becomes very unnatural, become very different person. So my recent kind of like revelation is just as cliche as it sounds, right? It's just be yourself, lah. Just be genuinely yourself. And if people don't like it, their problem, right? It's okay, right? They don't join you, which is great. And then you build a team that loves you, that follows you for who you are. I think it's much more natural. I think a lot of this also contributed to insecurity. So for example, when we went out fundraising in 2019, 2020, we pitched about what we wanted to build. But people were like, this is not, I don't want to back this. I don't want to invest in this because of reason ABC. Then I'll be like, why is that the case? Maybe I need to tweak my business plan to what they want to see, right? And then you do this enough, you start building something that people want and not what you want. And that was exactly what happened, right? Which is like bad lah, right? You're trying to build something that you don't want. You wake up, you question what you build, what you doing, what you were building. So long story short, I would say is just not being super clear about what I want in the early days, but now being super clear, that has helped, and being super genuine and just being honest with myself and building a team around that will want to follow me in this journey has been one of the biggest revelations, I say, that has helped me a lot, even in my morale. Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a lot of truth, right? I mean, I think we're always projecting, right? I mean, we're at work and we want to be on top of it and we want to be a good manager and a good teammate, right? And personally, myself, I always tell people, it's like, hey, if you don't know how to be a good boss, just act like a good boss, right? And tell yourself, what would a good boss do? And then act like that person. And that's good enough because for the persons receiving it, like they only know what you say and what you do, right? So they don't know what's going on in your mind. And if you know, commit to actually acting like a good boss, then in effect, you are a good boss, right? Because, that's what is the actual consequence at the end of the day, right?
But you believe in that? Like, do you still believe in that?
I still do, actually. I just think that people want you to be a good boss, and sometimes it's worth simulating what that looks like, right? And it's good for them, right? It's like, I don't know. It's like, I don't know, imagine if you're like at Starbucks, right? And then you're like barista, and another person's like, are you happy to give me a coffee? And I'll be like, no. Like, I'd rather be somewhere else, right? I mean, that's bad, right? Because the transaction is that you sign up to be a Starbucks, to be a barista. The transaction is that you serve them coffee, right? Even if you're good mood, bad mood, you serve them the coffee, right? And sometimes I guess leading a team, the transaction at some level and performance review mode is don't be an asshole and be a good boss, right? And you got to do it for 1 hour. Just do it for an hour, right? So,
but I disagree with that. That's the thing, right? I went through that because, yeah, like I always I read so much, right, about like, oh, what is it to be a great leader, right? This is the things you need to do, right? And then I personify that character that I kind of made out in my head and kind of like duct tape it with all the things I read, right? And then people can feel it. They will be like unnatural. Like even during one-on-ones, right? It's bad lah. It's like they won't be honest with you, right? And then Olivia was just talking to my colleague yesterday about why do we even do one-on-ones? And I think a lot of people miss the point, right? Because for us, I was like, okay, come up with a one-on-one template, right? And then you just fill it out and make sure you have routine. But what is the outcome? Actually, you realize that at the end of the day, it's just outcome mantra. It's just taking care of our people, right? We want people to say, I love my job. And that means 3 parts, right? One is say some form of career growth, if that's what they're optimizing for. And there's definitely a finance element. Let's not lie, right? So how can we make them have some financial breakthrough? And third one is like, I have a best friend at work. I think these are the 3 main parts. And how do we make people say, I love my job? And how can we as leaders grow them to the direction that they want? That they will say, hey, joining NodeFlair is the best ever decision I made in my career. It requires very genuine conversation. And it requires the person on the other side to be super vulnerable, right? Saying like, actually, I really, really want to earn this amount. I want to grow to this level. I aspire to be a manager, a leader by this age. And having this template, sitting opposite someone, typing while they are talking about it, and being this persona of this leader or manager, they won't be as vulnerable and they won't share. And which is a problem. So which is why I feel like I realized that people can sense genuinity very well. And I think it's just a human thing. And I can sense it when people are not being genuine with me. So I realized like, just be yourself. And then just tell them like, I think the heart for them, of course, you have to be like, you really have to love the team enough to like, I really want them to succeed. You want the company to be a blessing to them. Then of course, I think everything will guide But yeah, I tried being that manager, whatever that means, right? That image, right? And it failed terribly. I have team that like left me. I have team that hates me. Like, so like, I don't want to do that anymore. Like that was like 2018 to 20, arguably even 2022. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a work in progress, right? And the truth is, in 10 years, you and I will be better managers because of experience, which means that as of today, we are the worst we have ever been in the next 10 years, right? And I think the crux of it actually, I mean, the truth of the matter is that if you're a bad boss, it's better to be a boss with a script because you get to a certain level of performance, right? But I think if you're already hit a certain level of performance, it's already intrinsic in you. You feel comfortable. That's when I think you'll be more natural and relaxed, right? I think that's why we saw that. And I don't know if you saw some of the research on teachers that are out there, right? They're like, if you're a terrible teacher, it's better for you to have a classroom script that you follow and your teaching outcomes are better. But once you hit a certain level of proficiency, then you can let go of the script, right?
Fair.
And you can be better, right? Be more natural as a teacher.
Sense.
So for you, you've mentioned a lot about kind of like looking up to founders, doing a lot of research. So who are your personal role models from your perspective?
Role models. Actually, it's not that far away, right? So I think the first one is actually my ex-boss, right? I worked with him for Henry, right, from Shopback. I worked with him for 1 year. I worked my ass off there. I think he's very candid, a little bit too candid at times. But I think when he give you a feedback or his thoughts, you feel hurt, right? But when you think back 1 or 2 years later, right, you'll be like, why did I not heed that advice? Why am I so stubborn, right? Yeah, so I always kind of respected his focus. He's very focused on his execution, his ability to just really push people. Somehow he can really, I don't know, sell you that dream. And I also saw that dream myself. So I kind of know like what it means, right? So I always looked up to him to that. Another person is Siri, right? I just feel I always whenever I look at Siri or just interact with him and seeing how he interact with his team, I always just have this one word, genuinity, right? I think he's one of the most genuine boss. Of course, I wouldn't know the ins and outs, right? But just from my kind of like quick judgment and seeing how he reacts and behaves around his team, I always found that he's very genuine guy. And I told myself that I always wanted to build a team where with a bunch of people that I can be vulnerable with. Yeah, so I learned a lot from his body language and everything, and just be much clearer on what we want to build. Yeah.
And on that note, when have you personally been brave?
We really say is the past. I mean, it's always a work in progress, but I think one of the bravest moments is really the decision to be the mental switch to be vulnerable with my team. To go to my team and say like, hey, I really don't know how to do this, yeah. And just say like, hey, I'm scared. I'm really scared. Why are you doing this? I'm scared. Like, and just be honest, right? And you'll be so surprised that people actually will like, who really look me in the eye and like, hey, I'm sorry, I didn't thought that this will have this effect or whatever. And like, hey, can we try this together? So, and I think being brave is and having the courage to say I don't know, right? Is actually ironically very courageous, I feel, because it's not easy, right? To tell people like I don't know, I'm scared. It almost sounds like you're weak. But I actually feel that if you assemble the right team, when you're sort of weak in front of them and being honest with them, then more people want to help you. In fact, that is the irony, right? The more you say you don't know, I can't do this, the more people will come in and say, let me do this. And I think that has been the most amazing or the bravest thing I've done, which has served me very well. Yeah.
I think many folks struggle with that, right? Because they don't want to be vulnerable. They don't want to be honest. I think they rather just kind of, like you said, channel the persona, right? So what are some of the trade-offs that you think happen when you are actually vulnerable and honest with people? Do people cheat you? Does it not work? How does it feel? Yeah.
I'll let you know the answer in 1 year's time. No, but I think I have early signs of that because it doesn't work for everyone. Let's be honest. Okay, I give an example, right? Cash in bank. Do you tell your team that? Okay, my answer is depends. To a certain group of people, you can. But the thing is, you can't count on certain people's maturity when it comes to, say, sharing such sensitive information. So I give you an example. If you have $500,000 in the bank, person A will interpret as, holy cow, there's a lot of money. Person B may interpret as, this is a sinking ship. Some people will not follow up with questions, which is like, what's your burn? How much are we spending? Are we profitable? Right? So $500,000 can be really very little, or it could be like super good if it's like super profitable, right? So the thing is, some people are not candid enough or would not be curious enough to kind of poke holes or question deeper. They may just take it as face value and like, this is bad, I'm out. So it depends on the maturity of the team as well, right? Because, a common one, since you're talking about Glassdoor, right? People look at the reviews and take it at face value. Is it really true, though, that the company is that bad? We all know that there are some biases in the reviews, for example. Are you going to take it and accept that as a final? It can be a good conversation starter, but I think it cannot be taken as conclusion, right? And same thing for this. When you're vulnerable, when I'm vulnerable with my team, what I expect is two-way, right? They should reciprocate in a certain degree, or if they're uncomfortable, they tell me they're uncomfortable and then give me the chance to clarify certain things. For example, say cash in bank. But not everyone will be mature enough to do that, right? So I guess it really depends on the team you build. And that has been a big criteria for me right now. For anyone who wants to work with in NodeFlair and works with me directly, especially me, they have to be vulnerable. And it's a two-way street law.
As you think through this, what are some of the books that you think are important that a founder should read, or that you found that personally have been great or instrumental in your professional development?
So one of my favorite books, and one of the first few sort of like startup or business books I read is The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz, right? I think it's a lot of people's favorites. I just love the hustle, right? But one of the things that really changed me was this book called, okay, if I'm not wrong, it's called Dare to Lead by Brené Brown. I think it has been a big part of our conversation today, which is the courage to be vulnerable with your feelings. And really, ironically, when you say you don't know, I think people will respect you more. Again, depends on the team you build, but at least that's my style. I think at the end of the day, it's just how do you build a team around you that is your style and you're most comfortable with. And this happens to be my style. I guess I will just kind of continue that. But yeah, these two books I would say. Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz and Dare to Lead by Brené Brown.
If you could travel back in time to, let's say, a time machine back to the time when you were the only person in the NOC program to not get an attachment, right? You step out your time machine and you got a coffee with your younger self. What advice would you give yourself?
Okay, so first of all, I really believe that like things happen for a reason, right? And it's always a journey, right? But honestly, one of the most accelerating things for me was getting a coach. Because I think, so I will literally tell my old self, hey, just get a coach, man. Like, it helps. Because I realized that a lot of the mistakes or the reason why NodeFlair is not growing as fast as I wish it could be in 2018 till now, I'm a firm believer that the business grows as fast as the founder grows, right? And I think a lot of the kind of bottlenecks or problems that we face was just because of me not being mature enough, not being clear with what I want. And I think that one way to really accelerate is to do self-reflection. Get a coach would be very helpful. At least that has helped me a lot. So yeah, get a coach or do some self-reflection or journaling.
Thank you. So on that note, I'd love to kind of summarize the three big themes I got from this conversation. The first, of course, is I really enjoyed the discussion between and comparing Glassdoor, Indeed, and NodeFlair. So talking a little bit about journey from an job applicant or someone who's looking at reviews, but also looking at it from the recruiter perspective, some of the trade-offs around whether to advertise or whether to list a job or how to search for candidates. And I thought it was very interesting to hear about the explicit choices that NodeFlair made initially and some of the changes that you made in order to pivot or kind of like add products, right? Including creating that more of that one-stop shop from the candidate perspective, but like you said, still focusing on recruiters as another target segment. The second, of course, is I really appreciate, I think, your reflections around what it means to project a founder persona. So the founder persona that you felt were really important to have or to admire versus, I think, the mechanisms that you had to try to channel it, right? And I think we had a little bit of a debate about when it's useful and when it's not useful, when you're capable enough to be natural and when you require more of a script. And lastly, thank you so much for sharing about, I think, a consistent theme of vulnerable honesty, right? The goal of being honest with people who want you to be honest and are okay with you being honest, but also accepting that there is vulnerability with that conversation. And as a result, how much Dare to Lead has been a great book that has been a good catalyst for your own personal growth. I also love the phrase that you said about how the company grows as fast as the leader grows. And I thought your reflections around pushing for more executive coaching and personal self-awareness and growth is a really important lesson for many founders to take home.
Yeah, thanks for the summary.
Thank you for listening to Brave. If you enjoyed this episode, please share the podcast with your friends and colleagues. We would also appreciate you leaving a rating or review. Head over to www.bravesea.com for member content, resources, and community. Stay well and stay brave.